Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome, my dear students in grade 9 and our sons abroad, the students of all language schools in Egypt and in Saudi Arabia. Today, inshallah, we will start our final revision for the story A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I divided my revision, my dear students, to three parts. The first part will include the first three chapters. Let's start with the questions, the most important questions of the first three chapters. Question number 1. Speak about the big gap between the high and the low classes in the two countries. This is one of the most important questions, and this is always repeated in the exams in the last few years. There were huge differences and gaps between people at that time. The nobles were living in comfort and luxury, whereas the peasants and common people were living in poverty and misery. Question number 2. Why were the poor in very bad conditions in France and England? The King of England was too busy with problems with American colonies to worry about his own people who lived in poverty. The King of France and his noblemen were more concerned with their pleasures and wealth to worry about the poor, hungry, lower classes. Recalled to life, عاد إلى الحياة. Comment. That was Mr. Lorry's reply to the bank's message. It meant that Dr. Manette, who was believed to be dead for so long, was found alive. He would be recalled to life by the help of Mr. Lorry and Lucy Manette. سوف يعود إلى الحياة بمساعدة مستر لوري وابنته Lucy. Wait at Dover for Mademoiselle. Comment. This was the message the horse rider carried for Mr. Lorry. The message asked Mr. Lorry to wait at Dover for Miss Manette to accompany her to Paris as she was afraid to travel alone. What strange dream did Mr. Lorry have? What did it mean? ما الحلم الغريب الذي رآه مستر لوري وما هو وماذا يعني? He dreamed that he was digging a man out of grave and asking him how long he had been buried. The man answered that he was buried for almost 18 years. This was a reflection of Mr. Lorry's mission of recalling Dr. Manette to life after his long imprisonment. بعد فترة السجن الطويلة. Why couldn't you tell her what you had to do without frightening her to death? Comment. Miss Pross, the woman who had taken care of Lucy since her childhood, said this to Miss Lorry. Miss Pross asked Mr. Lorry violently and shouted those words at him when Lucy had fainted after knowing that the truth from him. Of course, the truth of that her father is still alive. Described the conditions of people in Saint Antoine, giving example of their misery. Also, this is one of the repeated questions in the exams. Describe صف الظروف المعيشية للناس في سانت أنطوان وأعطي مثال لحالة البؤس التي كانوا يعيشون فيها. Saint Antoine in Paris was a poor place where poor people lived in hunger, poverty, sickness, and misery. The streets were dirty. People lived there like animals. The scene of the wine cask shows how far people were poor and suffering. They gathered down to drink a mixture of mud and wine when the cask broke. What happened when the wine cask dropped from the cart? ماذا حدث عندما انسكب الجرة التي تحمل الواين؟ The wine spilled on the rough stones in the street. All the people stopped what they were doing and ran over to drink the wine that was mixed with mud. The wine stains left the streets looking blood-stained. Discuss. The scene of the wine cask is a symbol from Charles Dickens on the miserable life in France at that time. كان منظر القدر الذي كان يحمل هذا السائل الخمر رمزية من تشارلز ديكنز، هو كاتب القصة، عن حالة البؤس التي كان يعيشها الناس في فرنسا. The scene has a double meaning. It shows how poor the life of the lower classes in France was. It also predicts the real blood that would stain the streets of France during the Revolution. And he is in the same exact state he was in when his friends asked if I would risk taking him in and not breathe a word about the matter to anyone comment. Ernest Defarge said this to Mr. Lorry when the latter asked if Dr. Manette was alone in the room. Monsieur Defarge explained that the man was in the same state he was in when he left the prison, and Defarge risked taking him to his house. هو الذي خاطر بحياته لإخراجه من السجن. 105 North Tower. Also, this is also one of the repeated questions in the exams. That was Dr. Manette's answer when Defarge asked him about his name. That was the number of his solitary cell in which he had been imprisoned for 18 years. This was the name he got used to hearing for 18 years, that he forgot his own name. That night long ago, when I was called out of the house, she had laid her head on my shoulder. She was afraid for me to go comment. Dr. Manette said this when he saw Lucy. She reminded him of her mother and the night he was taken away to prison. She was sitting with him, laying her head on his shoulder when he was called out. Lucy's golden hair made Dr. Manette remember a detailed scene that had happened 18 years earlier. What is the significance of that? ما مغزى ذلك? Dr. Manette had kept a few strands of his wife's golden hair. احتفظ بخصلات شعر من شعر زوجته الذهبي في أحد جيوبه. When he saw that Lucy had the same hair, his memory was refreshed and remembered the moment he was taken out of his house to the prison 18 years earlier. This shows that the man's memory wasn't completely lost, and there was a good possibility for him to lead a normal life once more. It's the same. How can it be? When was it? Comment. Dr. Manette said this when he saw Lucy. Lucy had the same hair of his late wife. He didn't know about her birth. he wanted to know of the birth of his daughter because she was born after he had gone to prison. He wanted to know how and when that happened. What effect had prison left on Dr. Manette? ما الأثر الذي تركه السجن على الدكتور Manette? Dr. Manette was greatly affected. He became a wreck of a man, بقايا إنسان. He suffered the loss of mind, the weakness in body. He became frightened, shaking, and uncertain of anything. He could remember nothing of his past life, even his name. What did Gaspard do when he saw the wine cask dropped from the cart and the red wine flow on the ground, and why? ماذا فعل Gaspard? He dipped his fingers, غمس أصابعه, in the muddy wine and wrote the word blood on the wall because he believed that the revolution would break out and the blood would flow like wine in the streets. Of course, we had seen that Defarge tried to prevent him from doing that. You are not the jeweler's daughter. Comment. أنت ألست بنت السجان? Dr. Manette was confused when he saw a young lady in his prison cell. كان معتقدا أنه لا زال في زنزانته. He thought that he was still in prison and wondered what brought that young lady there. But when he saw the young lady had the same strands of golden hair of his late wife, his weak memory was refreshed. I hope, this is another question, the last question. I hope he won't regret being recalled to life. Comment. These words were said by Defarge as the carriage went away with Dr. Manette and his daughter to the port, then to England. He was afraid that he would face very difficult circumstances in the future, especially during the revolution. This is the end of our session, or the first part of our revision, my dear students. Wait for me for the second part in the second session, inshallah. I wish you the best of luck and brilliant success. Thank you and goodbye.